My name is Victoria Davis. I'm 32, a project manager in IT based in Washington, D.C. for nearly a decade. My life has been a loop of work, bills, and responsibility. I carried my family like a second job, paid my father's hospital bills after his accident, funded my sister's tuition, even drained my savings when a flood destroyed our only car. Every time they needed help, I said yes. Every time life gave me a choice between me and them, I chose them. So when Dad invited me to dinner last week, I went thinking, maybe, finally, they wanted to thank me. We sat around the same oak table I'd refinished years ago. The smell of barbecue smoke drifting in through the window. My mother smiled nervously, fiddling with her napkin. Katie, my younger sister, looked radiant. Makeup perfect. Wine glass balanced delicately in her manicured hand. Then Dad cleared his throat, his voice even but cold. Victoria, we've made a decision. My fork hovered in midair. The company, the house, and the savings. They're all going to Katie. He said it like he was reading the weather forecast. For a second, I didn't process the words. Then Mom spoke, her tone quiet, rehearsed. She's building something big. You'll be fine on your own. You'll be fine. That phrase cut deeper than the rest. I looked from one face to another, searching for a hint of hesitation. Something to prove this was a bad joke. There was none. Dad just looked at me, calm and certain. Katie leaned back in her chair, the faintest smirk at the corner of her lips. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The room blurred slightly around the edges. Every sleepless night, every deadline, every sacrifice, wiped away with one decision. I thought about the New York job I'd turned down 2 years earlier, so I could stay close and help them. About the trips I never took, the promotions I passed up, the dreams I shelved. They didn't just betray me. They rewrote my worth. I didn't flip the table. I didn't cry. I just pushed my plate away, my voice barely above a whisper. I understand. Then I stood, walked out to the porch, and breathed in the sharp DC air. The skyline glittered in the distance. Indifferent. Alive. Free. That night, something in me broke. Not with noise or fury, but with quiet final clarity. They thought I'd stay silent, but what they didn't know was that I'd been keeping records. And the truth they buried would soon destroy their illusion of control. 4 years earlier, before betrayal had a name, I would have done anything for them. It started with my father's accident on the Beltway. The kind of crash that leaves metal twisted, like paper, and air thick with the smell of burnt rubber. I remember sprinting through hospital corridors, heart pounding, praying he'd still be breathing. He was, barely. Casted arm, fractured ribs, head wrapped in white gauze. The bills came before he could even walk again. $15,000 in total. Each statement colder than the last. Mom's voice trembled on the phone that night. Victoria, if we touch our retirement fund, we'll lose everything. There was no retirement fund. But there was me. I drained my savings. Every dollar I'd built from long nights debugging code for clients I'd never meet. When I pressed transfer, my hand shook, but my heart told me it was right. Family first. Always. When Dad came home, he didn't mention the money. Not once. He sat in his armchair flipping through TV channels as if nothing had happened. I convinced myself that seeing him alive was thanks enough. But something in me cracked. A small fracture that would later grow into something dangerous. After that, I lived like a ghost with a paycheck. My life turned into a spreadsheet of survival. No coffee runs, no dinners out, no weekend trips. Just lines of code and instant noodles. Every night the glow of my laptop was the only light in my apartment. My friends stopped inviting me places. She's busy again, they'd say. They weren't wrong. Between my IT job and side contracts, I barely slept. when Dad finally ditched the cane and returned to running our family's small logistics company. He never once asked where the hospital money came from. I waited for a thank you that never arrived. Even Mum's gentle, "We're so grateful for you," felt mechanical, like a reflex, not emotion. Still, I told myself peace was worth more than pride. I kept helping, kept fixing, kept showing up. I thought that was love. That responsibility was the same thing as respect, but it wasn't. It was convenience. Every month I rebuilt my savings, dollar by dollar. But the red line in my budget, that $15,000 transfer, glared at me every time I opened my banking app, a reminder that my generosity had become their expectation, and deep down, I knew something my family would never admit. The day I saved them was also the day they learned they could always rely on me and never repay me. But I didn't know that was only the first debt I'd pay, because soon another crisis would come. And this time, it had my sister's name written all over it. 2 years after my father's accident, I thought things had finally settled. The company was stable, Dad was back to work, and for once, I could breathe. That illusion lasted exactly one lunch. It was a Sunday, the kind of warm DC afternoon that made everything feel deceptively calm. We were halfway through our meal when Katie, my younger sister, set her phone down and announced with the confidence of someone who'd never paid a bill in her life, "I've decided to study marketing at DC University." Mom gasped with pride. Dad nodded, proud and hopeful. I smiled too, until the number came up. $10,000 a year, tuition alone, not counting books, dorm, and whatever her networking would cost. My stomach tightened. I was still recovering from Dad's medical bills, but of course, they looked at me, their reliable solution in human form. I remember Mom's voice, soft but expectant. "She's your sister, Vic. She's building her future." And just like that, I became her financier. Month after month, I watched my balance shrink, tuition transfers, rent deposits, emergency book fees. I juggled late payments on my own bills just to keep her dream alive. I convinced myself it was temporary, that she'd make us proud. But her version of building a future looked nothing like mine. Soon her updates turned from lectures to launch parties. "I'm networking, sis," she'd say between giggles over the phone. You never know who might invest. Her social media told the real story. Rooftop brunches, beach weekends, designer heels, and champagne smiles. I wanted to believe it was all part of her marketing strategy. I wanted to, but I couldn't. One night while helping Mom with tax documents, I found the truth. Buried in the family credit card statement were charges. $300 shoes, $200 spa visits, $500 weekend trips. When I confronted her, she just laughed. "It's all part of building connections, Vic. You wouldn't understand." I bit my tongue until it almost bled. She was right. I didn't understand. I didn't understand how she could spend freely while I skipped dinners to cover her tuition. I didn't understand how Mom and Dad could keep defending her recklessness while I carried the debt they ignored. Still, I paid. Still, I told myself she'd turn things around. But every time her GPA slipped lower, my resentment climbed higher. Nights blurred into spreadsheets and freelance coding gigs, my exhaustion growing heavier than my wallet. I was saving her reputation while mine was being ground down to dust. And even then, I forgave her, because I believed family meant sacrifice. But the next crisis wouldn't come from Katie's classes or parties. It would come from the sky itself, a flood that would drown not just our car, but the last piece of faith I had left in them. A year later, it wasn't a phone call about grades or tuition that shattered my calm. It was the storm that swallowed DC whole. The rain started slow that week, then turned into a relentless downpour. Streets became rivers, and the familiar hum of the city was replaced by sirens and static. I was working late when my phone buzzed with Mom's name, flashing across the screen. "Victoria!" she gasped, her voice trembling. "The car's dead." It stopped right in the middle of the road. "Your father's meetings, my errands. We can't manage without it." The next morning, I met them at the mechanic's lot. Our old SUV sat half submerged in brown water, doors caked with mud, headlights shattered. The estimate came in at $7,000. New transmission, electrical overhaul, complete rebuild. Mom's eyes filled with panic. Dad muttered something about tight budgets. I already knew what would happen next, so I did what I always did. I opened my laptop, logged into my account, and transferred the money. My savings, gone again. That night, I stayed up running database migrations for corporate clients. Double shifts, triple coffee, eyes burning under the blue glow of my screen. The next 2 weekends vanished into work. My world shrank into code and exhaustion. 2 weeks later, the car roared back to life. Mum hugged me tightly and whispered, "You really are the backbone of this family." Dad gave a curt nod and went back to reading his paper. I told myself it didn't matter, that at least they could keep moving. But the silence between gratitude and entitlement had become too thin to ignore. Then came the phone call that could have changed everything. The one from New York, a senior project management position at a top tech firm, 6 figures, a new apartment, and a clean start. A chance to live for myself for once. For 3 nights, I paced my tiny apartment, staring out at the capital's faint glow. I thought about Mom's trembling voice, Dad's disapproval, Katie's networking trips, the endless emergencies that kept me tethered to their world. When I finally picked up the phone, I said the words I thought were noble. "I can't take it. My family needs me." But what I didn't realize was that I wasn't choosing loyalty. I was choosing to stay small. I wasn't saving them anymore. I was saving their excuses. And then came that dinner, the one where they told me everything I'd built for them would go to someone else. But betrayal doesn't always end with words. Sometimes it comes signed, sealed, and notarized in someone else's name. And I was about to uncover just how deep their deception went. A week after that dinner, the one where they stripped me of everything I'd ever earned, I met Shannon Harris, my best friend since high school, at a cafe near DuPont Circle. The air smelled of espresso and wet pavement, the kind of mix that feels both comforting and tense. Shannon was already there, waiting in the corner booth, her phone face down on the table, a sure sign something was wrong. When I sat down, she didn't waste time on small talk. She slid her phone toward me. "You need to see this," she said quietly. It was a screenshot, a bank statement, my sister's name, Katie Davis, and next to it, a 6-figure loan taken out against our family company as collateral. The same company my father had just promised to her at that dinner. The number glared back at me. $120,000. My breath caught. "Tell me this isn't real," I whispered. "It's real," Shannon said. She told people it was for a startup, some marketing app or whatever. But it tanked months ago. The noise of the cafe faded into a dull hum. Katie hadn't just been careless. She'd gambled away our parents' future. Everything I'd worked to keep standing was collapsing under her debt. I drove straight to my parents' house, heart hammering against my ribs. When I stepped inside, Mom was stirring soup in the kitchen, pretending everything was fine. Her way of avoiding truths that smelled like smoke. "Mom," I said, holding up my phone, "did you know Katie used the company as collateral?" Her hand froze mid-stir. The spoon clattered softly against the pot. "She just needed a chance," she murmured. "She told me it was a sure thing, Victoria. It failed," I said, my voice low but sharp. She buried us in debt. The company could be gone. Mom's eyes darted away. She's young, she whispered. She made a mistake. You'll figure it out. You always do. That line, you'll figure it out, burned hotter than betrayal. It was their truth in 4 words. I've been figuring it out my whole life, I said. Dad's hospital bills, Katie's tuition, your car repairs, all of it. And you're still asking me to clean this up. She didn't deny it, didn't even look up. I realized then that she wasn't protecting Katie. She was protecting the lie that Katie was worth saving. I walked out before she could find another excuse. As I drove through the DC streets that night, city lights smeared like broken promises across my windshield, I finally understood. My family didn't see me as their daughter. I was their insurance policy, their safety net, their fix, but not anymore. Because soon, they'd come begging again. Not for love or forgiveness, but for salvation. And this time, I'd finally have the strength to say no. It happened a month later. Just when I thought I was finally free of them. I was in the middle of a project review at the office when my assistant knocked softly on the glass door. Miss Davis, she said hesitantly, your family's here. They're waiting in the lobby. The word family hit like a chill. I hadn't spoken to them since the night I confronted Mum about Katie's loan. I almost told my assistant to send them away, but some part of me, the part that still wanted closure, got up and walked out. They looked completely out of place in the sleek marble lobby. Dad stood stiff in his worn-out jacket. Mum's face was pale and drawn, and Katie lingered behind them, phone in hand, eyes red but unrepentant. My brother, Chris, who usually stayed neutral in family matters, looked like he'd been dragged there against his will. I folded my arms. What's going on? Dad cleared his throat. The company's in trouble. Katie's loan, it's due. If we don't pay, they'll seize everything. There it was. The inevitable plea. Mom stepped closer, voice trembling. Please, sweetheart. We could lose the house. Chris nodded weakly. Vic, if we all pitch in, maybe we can fix this. Just like before. I laughed. Not out of amusement, but disbelief. Just like before. You mean the last 10 times I fixed everything while the rest of you stood by? Dad's jaw clenched. You're overreacting, am I? I snapped. After I paid your hospital bills, funded Katie's tuition, bought the car, and now you expect me to clean up her mess again. You made your decision at that dinner. Remember, everything was hers. Katie's cheeks flushed. You don't get it, she said sharply. I was trying to build something real. At least I had the guts to take risks instead of hiding behind a paycheck. I stepped closer, meeting her gaze head on. At least I didn't gamble away everything our parents built. Chris raised his hands. Come on, Vic. Don't start this again. I'm not starting anything, I said quietly. I'm ending it. Dad's voice turned hard. So you're turning your back on your own family. I looked at him for a long moment, the man I'd saved more times than I could count, and said, No, you turned your backs first. When you chose to believe her over me, silence fell. Even the lobby air seemed to hold its breath. Then I turned and walked away, their voices fading behind me. That night, Katie went online and did what she always did best, performed. Her post spread like wildfire. Victoria abandoned us when we needed her most. An old family photo, a caption soaked in guilt. The comments poured in. Sympathy for her, judgment for me. But I didn't crumble. Not this time. I blocked them all. Because the truth has a way of cleaning house. And within 3 months, karma would do what I never could. It would take everything they stole and leave me standing free. 3 months later, I didn't need to lift a finger. Life did the work for me. The family company, the one my father had spent 3 decades building, and my sister had gambled into oblivion, officially folded under Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The court filings were public. I didn't have to ask. I saw their names printed beside the words, "Liquidation Order," and for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Everything went. The office, the equipment, even the house they'd sworn would never leave the family. Sold at auction to cover the $120,000 debt Katie had left behind. Katie disappeared soon after. No calls, no texts, no apology, just silence. Mom and Dad moved in with friends from church, their lives packed into a few cardboard boxes and borrowed suitcases. Their credit was ruined, their future gone. One evening, as I wrapped up a project report, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "The company's gone. We need you, Victoria." I stared at the message for a long time. Not with anger, but with clarity. My thumb hovered over the keyboard before I typed 4 words that ended a lifetime of being their lifeline. Not my problem anymore. I hit send, then blocked his number. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was clean. For years, my apartment had felt like a bunker. Bare walls, second-hand furniture, a life built around survival. Now, it began to feel like home. I bought a small painting from a local art fair. Bright colors, nothing expensive, but it made the place glow. I signed up for a weekend pottery class. I started running again, my feet hitting the pavement along the Potomac with the rhythm of release. At work, I rebuilt myself too, led a successful software rollout, earned a promotion to senior project manager, and finally booked my first real vacation. A quiet weekend in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Freedom didn't come with fireworks. It came with stillness, the kind that fills your lungs when you finally stop drowning. Sometimes late at night, I'd think about them, not with hatred, but with distance. Their downfall wasn't revenge. It was consequence. The world simply handed back what they'd earned. One lesson echoed through it all. Family isn't ownership. It's choice. And love without respect is just another form of debt. One I'd finally stopped paying. Now, when I walk past the Lincoln Memorial, glowing against the DC sky, I feel lighter. Not because I escaped them, but because I found myself. They lost their fortune. I found my freedom. And in the end, I learned the truth the hard way. Sometimes walking away isn't cruelty. It's the purest kind of justice.